This is Karen with NewClevelandRadio.net, and it is time for Beyond the Harvest with Barbara Masterson. And for those of you who are wondering, as you're looking at this and you see a picture of Barbara standing amongst her paintings, I encourage you to go back to her previous shows because we've looked at these paintings from all different angles. And I'm sure there are even more angles that we could look at Barbara's artwork and um, interpret them for our own meaning. And I know Barbara has many of these available for sale. And if you check the show notes after the podcast today, you'll be able to find out how you can contact Barbara and maybe have one of her creations hanging in your house. So, welcome, Barbara. It's been a couple of weeks since we've talked.
Yes, it has. It has. I thought today I'd take a step back a bit and look at some paintings that I created. Well, here's the first one. These are small paintings, and they are created with gouache. And gouache is a painting medium that's like watercolor, but it's opaque.
Oh,
So
okay.
a traditional watercolorist will use the white of the paper as they don't use white. So if you look at someone who's painting traditionally with watercolor, it's quite different from what I have here, because, for instance, the white on his sleeve is painted white. It's not the white of the paper. And gouache, I like to think of gouache as an oil painter's watercolor because it's opaque and you can paint one color over another, where if you do that in traditional watercolor, it changes the color beneath it. So these I did them early in this journey, which started in 2015, and then periodically I go back to them, and there's a definite different feel to these small pieces. They're looser.
So explain that comment. What do you mean that they're looser?
There isn't a lot of detail. Like if you look at this painting, another small one, it's only 5 by 7 inches. His hands, it's just a gesture. There isn't any detail there, and his face, it's just, there isn't a lot of detail as if you compared them to my larger oil paintings. These are quick.
Okay. Yeah, and what I see in something like this is, I can imagine whoever I want in that having that face. I'm not necessarily identifying with a specific person until I look at it, and maybe I see somebody that I recognize, somebody that I know. It's quite a different way of painting. I love that.
It is, and looking at these make me want to go paint them again in this style. Now the white that is in the background, that is the white of the paper. I just left that, and that was intentional. But again, the grass is free brush strokes, and the clothing as well. So the edges of this painting were not painted, and that's intentional.
Okay. And obviously, I just learned something today about watercolors, never realizing that the white was really the background of the paper rather than painting it white. I mean, my first assumption would be, yeah, I have to, paint every edge of this canvas.
Well, you don't.
Yeah. So one of the things I find interesting, um, when I'm looking at the brush strokes on the grass, especially not in front, but behind these two workers, my mind goes and says, oh, I can easily do that. However, I've tried and mine never comes out looking like anything that it should. And then I always tell everybody, well, it's modern art. Um, but is it, I guess what I'm trying to ask, is there a certain technique that you learned to do it so that it actually looks like greenery in the back rather than what I would have called green smudge if I had done it?
Well, yeah, there's people study for years how to paint. That's what my master's is in, and what you learn typically is technique and color. Color is very complicated, and how color recedes and how it comes forward, and simultaneous contrast. So there's definitely a lot of technique and things that you can learn if you study with somebody. Um, yeah.
Okay. That would help me in the future if I decided to take canvas out again, because I did it for a couple of years and I put them away because, like I said, I had to tell everybody, yeah, that's modern art. Don't you like it?
Oh, I I didn't realize that, Karen.
Uh,
Uh, Definitely, I would encourage you to take them out again, and if there's, I mean, right now it's difficult. I know people are teaching virtually,
right.
um, but if you see somebody's work that you like and you'd be interested in their technique, see if they're teaching, and enjoy. Just enjoy it. Don't put any pressure on yourself.
So now here, the little bit of white that I see, was that painted or did you leave those spaces for
Well,
the
the grass, the landscape is left as the white of the paper, but if you see light spots on the clothing, that's painted.
okay. And the white
So,
where you paint it obviously has a different look as well. So it's, I, again, looking at this online and as other people are going to, we probably aren't going to see it as easily, but on the horizon, the white is almost a grayish white, whereas on the clothing, it's a brighter white.
mhm, good observation.
Love it. They almost
So,
they look like they're crawling through the jungle.
yeah,
Yeah.
they're picking and weeding. So in most of these, you don't see any detail in the faces, and once again, it's truly an unseen group of people that harvest our food and weed the plants and plant the plants. They're an unseen population.
Well, as I've said before, we have to become more aware of these individuals. Even if we don't put an actual face to them, we have to know that if it weren't for them, um, we're not going to get the produce at the market. Um, and it's backbreaking work. I went out in my backyard or my little patio the other day to do some weeding, and I can't get down on my one knee because I have a knee replacement. So I was bent over just like these gentlemen are
Mm,
here. And it was backbreaking work just to pull a few weeds. So
yeah.
I can't imagine how they do this day in and day out, all different kinds of weather. Yeah.
There are many, there are organizations that help low-wage earners, and two of the people that I support, one is the Worker Center for Justice of New York, and they are lawyers that go to bat for some of the workers and try to bring equity to what they do. And the other organization I support is Rural and Migrant Ministry, who it's a wonderful organization that helps these people as well. And I would highly recommend anyone donating to them. Certain times of the year, I will donate 50% of any paintings that I sell. I just came off of it's about 6 months of doing that where I will give half of what the painting sells for to either one of those organizations.
Very nice. Now he looks like he was picking flowers.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And
He-
that's
he-
yeah,
no,
for those of us who like flowers, you have to think about how did it get to the florist shop? They were grown somewhere, cultivated somewhere, and somebody had to go out and, you know, uh, harvest them and bring them, to the florist shop. So it's not as easy as you think that you just walk in and, oh, they're there. There was a process for them to get to that flower shop.
yes, yes. And what struck me about that image, his name was Paul, is that this is handsome, muscle-bound man who's picking these delicate flowers. So I did that small gouache painting of him, and then I did another larger painting of him in oil paint, doing the same thing. I just found it ironic, and I talked to him about what he was doing, and he said none of the other workers like to pick the flowers, but he liked to do that. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this gentleman is walking away from me, obviously, and he's carrying cartons into the field that the people that are harvesting product they're going to put in those boxes.
Interesting. Everybody has a job in this chain of events. I love that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Another fellow bringing boxes to the field.
So now they have their boxes and they're uh, picking the vegetables or whatever that is and putting them in the boxes.
Yes. And some of them wear masks, not because this is COVID, because it wasn't painted during COVID, but they wear the mask to protect themselves against the pesticides and the pesticide dust that is residual on some of the plants and some of the vegetables.
So now thinking about it, they're working in the fields and that have all this pesticides. And yes, they're covering their face so they breathe less of it in, but they're getting it on their hands, on their skin. Um, do we know if that's safe? Should they be wearing gloves, or would gloves make it too difficult for them to do their job? Just something that I'm thinking of as soon as you said the word pesticide.
I'm not sure. I have noticed that the younger workers that come have a tendency to cover themselves more than the older gentlemen that are here. And even when it's 90 degrees, they'll have face coverings, bandanas, and hats and heavy clothing. And I did talk to one of the workers one day, and it was horribly hot. It was really hot, and he was picking apples, and I asked him why he had so much clothing on, and he said it's because of the pesticides and what, the chemicals they use on the apple trees. That would be a good question for either one of those organizations.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I know our society, believes that we need to have all these pesticides out there. Um, but I just wonder, before we created them, we grew vegetables, we harvested crops, and they were safe for eating. And yes, maybe we lost some to the pests out there, but we still are. Even the pesticides aren't keeping everything 100%. And I just wonder what it would be like if we just stopped using them.
I think it would be wonderful,
Yeah, I think so too.
but I highly doubt it. That's why I try to grow all of my food, believe it or not.
Sure. Absolutely. We all need to live on a farm and grow our own food. So,
Yeah. This is another one that, if anyone has seen prior podcasts, I did this in a very large format. I think it's 4 feet by 2.5 feet, something like that. But I had done a smaller one first, and then when I really liked the shapes these figures made, they almost look like rocks to me. Or
right.
I think it takes a minute to see what these things are, and they're people obviously at this point picking.
So I'm looking at the foreground on here. Um, Obviously different shades of green, but when it first came up, I wasn't totally focused on it. And at first I thought they were like in a fish pond. But then the closer I got to the picture, I'm realizing that's not what it is. But it's interesting how you can look at a piece of art and see something totally different than what it is at just a glance. It's until you start looking at it and seeing all the intricacies in it that you can actually, gain some understanding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to me it almost feels like they're floating in these
Yep.
leaves, and how far up they come. I mean, it's waist high.
Yep.
At least. This is actually another one that I did small like this, and then I really enjoyed the shapes and the flow of the cloth, and so I painted it large.
So when you paint it small and then decide to paint it large, does it always come out exactly like the small one, or are there changes in it?
Oh, there'll be changes in it. Yeah, definitely changes. I mean, just the way that I paint large with oil paint is much tighter and controlled than these small pieces, and a lot more detail.
So, like, if I know that one, most of these are in a private collection, meaning that they've been purchased. But if somebody, let's say, wanted you to repaint it, okay, for them, and you chose to in a small size, even at new creation would probably look a little bit different. It's not going to be exactly, because you're not exactly at that point where you were the first time.
Yes, yes, that's true. And I've had people approach me and ask me if I would do uh, like a smaller version of an oil painting because they just don't have the space. So I have done that. Um, I'm actually in the process of doing a commission now, which is exciting to me, of a worker. And so people come to me with different ideas, and I'm pretty open to hearing what people have to say or ask me to do. And if I can do it, sometimes I can't do it, but sometimes I can.
Absolutely.
So this fellow is carrying these big black plastic trays on his head into the field.
The colors are so pretty.
I love color. I really love color. This fellow was carrying buckets into the field. So those green ring-like things, that's what that is.
Oh,
And
okay.
he just kind of turned and looked at me.
And you can see here he has a hat on underneath his hoodie, and his hoodie is covering a good portion of his side of his face. And then
Hmm.
that's protecting him from the sun or wind or whatever else is happening out there.
Yep. This is something that you don't see too often in the field, is women picking. Uh, and if they are in the field, sometimes they don't want me to take their picture, and that could be for a number of reasons. It could be vanity, it could be religious, it could be that they're afraid that of their status in the United States. So if they don't want their picture taken, I don't take it for sure.
Sure.
But these ladies didn't seem to mind. This is one of my favorite peaches. He's carrying poles to be pounded into the ground to support plants.
And you showed this in one of the larger paintings, I believe, last time.
Yes. Yep. Yes, when we talked about Vincent and peaches.
Right. Yes. Yeah. As soon as I saw this come up, it was like, I think I remember that picture. Even though his face was so covered up, you could still see his face is so weathered.
Hmm. And he's a young young man. So this is the last piece that I'm showing today. This happens to be colored pencil, and it's small, and it's a woman. And I took her picture in the same field as the other two women in the other painting. And I did a couple of colored pencil drawings, but it is so labor intensive. It's crazy. I have these wonderful, wonderful colored pencils, and this is something you might want to try, Karen.
Okay.
Get yourself the best colored pencil that you can afford, and layer the colors one on top of another. Like for instance, in her left arm there, the red and the orange, and there's purple in there, and you can just layer one color on top of another and top of another. And it's enjoyable to work with, but again, it's very labor intensive,
Okay.
more so than the gouache, and I would say more so than doing an oil painting.
Well, it's funny, and I'll share this with our listeners because it's not a belief I have anymore. But growing up, um, not that my parents expected me to be perfect, but if I were to attempt to draw something or paint something, um, and they didn't think a lot of it, okay, either they saw that maybe it looked sloppy in their eyes, or they couldn't recognize what I was doing. Um, I always would get the comment, either learn how to do that better or give it up.
Mhm.
And my mother was very artistic. Um, I never saw her draw anything, but she was a seamstress. She would do all kinds of beaded art for people, and I I didn't have the patience like she did, and I wasn't
Mhm.
taught about patience. Okay, it would be like, oh, I want to paint a picture, so I'm gonna go do it, and I'm gonna get it done. And it's only within probably the last 10 years that I've realized, wait a second, it gets done when it gets done. And that's something that you've talked about as, as well, that there are some that you've started on and you stop and you come back to them later.
Mhm.
And too many of us believe that whatever that project is we're going to do, whether it's going to be painting, drawing, writing, sewing, cooking, whatever, um, we have to do it now, get it done, and either it's going to come out good or it's going to come out bad or it's going to come out mediocre. But when you want it to be right, you have to take the time to do it. And like you said, learn about it, which I never did. I never even opened up an art book that might give me some ideas as to
Mhm.
how to do things. So um, I'm really impressed that we can share this with your listeners, that we can all make an attempt. And some of us may be very good at it. Some of us may not be as good. But you know what? If you're enjoying it, that's probably the most important part.
That's true. That's very true.
Well, as tedious as this picture may have been to create, it, it's beautiful. I mean, you can see the shadows and the marks and the depth through it, the whole picture. Um, so now I have a question for you. My husband um, took art in college. He loved it. Um, and he used to use something called a Connie crayon.
Conti. Yep.
So, what are those? Because I've
Those
not, okay,
those are that's a medium that's very typically used in college situations. It's a wax based, I believe it's wax based color. It's like charcoal, but it's a
okay,
little it's not as powdery as charcoal.
got it. Okay. Because I'm trying to come up with something exciting to put together for him. Um, he does do a lot of photographs, uh,
Uh-huh.
but then they stay in the camera forever. And my comment to him was, you love to draw, and he kept saying, yeah, but I love to draw, with this certain media. And so I went online and I found them, and I'm thinking, you know what? I think I have to either get him a sketch pad, in this medium, just so that he can do something to make himself feel good. Uh, so I'm excited. Maybe I'll have a budding artist in my life.
Oh, that would be great. You should definitely get them some Conti crayons and some, crayon is the wrong
Yeah, that's what he
term
called
for
it.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's what they're called, but people think of a crayon, they
And
think
that
of crayon,
waxy. Yep.
but get them some of Conti crayon and some a sketch pad. That would be nice. And then while he's taking photographs, he could sketch as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I'm so glad that we got to have another virtual tour of your paintings, looking at them from a different perspective. Um, for those of you listening, if you notice at the bottom of the slide, it has Barbara's website at it, and that also will be in the show notes. It also has her email address. So if you have questions about any of these or any of the other shows that we've done, please contact her. And hopefully, we're going to have a guest in a couple of weeks and talk about gallery art. And um, I know I've only been to an art gallery twice in my life. Can you believe that? Just twice. Um, and I'm not sure why. I mean, I go down to the art museum a lot, uh,
Hmm.
but I've never really thought about going into a gallery. And you've excited me enough to say, hey, you know what? This could be a fun afternoon. Um,
It could be.
and finding galleries all over. They don't have to just be in New York City. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. Well, I want to thank you again, and I look forward to our next show.
Thank you. Thank
Have
you very much.
have a great day. Bye bye.
You as well. Bye-bye.
Bye.